Play-by-play.
So the play-by-play segment of the Belated Binge podcast is where we take a recap and look at the events of the chapter or chapters that we're covering for a given episode. And today we start with the journey from platform 9 3/4, and it starts off pretty rough. Harry had to go back to the Dursleys for a month, and they completely ignored him, which is just a new form of their now in 10 years of emotional abuse for this child. Vernon seems to agree to take Harry to the train station for two reasons. One, he has to go into town, London, to get Dudley's pigtail removed, which he's had for a month. Let that sink in for a second. Also, because Harry tells him about platform 9 3/4, and Vernon just can't wait to drop him off and laugh about how there's no such platform. He finds joy in the idea that his 11-year-old nephew, who he's legally responsible for, is going to walk into a busy train station and presumably not find the train and just get stuck there by himself. Vernon's a real piece of work. He literally walks Harry into the station, shows him there's no sign for platform 9 3/4, and tells him to have a nice term. And he just leaves him there. The author does a really good job of writing characters that you're just supposed to hate, because the Dursleys are the definition of awful. Luckily, there's a master plan at work here. Of course, you might be thinking, what the heck is he talking about? I mean, who happens to walk by talking loud enough for the one lone wizard boy to hear? Quote, packed with muggles, of course. Now, what's the platform number? Unquote. You could say this is lucky for Harry. How incredibly convenient that Harry's future family happens to be walking by at this very moment of need. It's almost as if someone planned it. And I believe someone did plan this. That someone is Albus Dumbledore. Who else? Molly was basically a sleeper agent in this train station, and her seemingly out of character comments were for Harry's benefit more than anybody else's. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into this particular idea, you should join us over on Patreon for the latest Theory Corner episode. Patrons can not only get exclusive content like Theory Corner, we'll do some awards banquets over there. We're toying with some other ideas for bonus content over there. Like when we do have guests on the show, I try to make sure that we get an extra segment with them. And also, all patrons get early access to ad-free episodes. So if you would like to support the show and get that, those perks, go ahead and head on over to patreon.com/belatedbinge and, help us out. Now that Harry's got a little bit of hope, he follows the Weasleys to try to figure out where the heck is he supposed to go. We get the introduction to the twins, who are cracking jokes, which we'll later learn is literally their calling in life. Molly introduces Harry to Ron, which ends up being the most important introduction for Harry's entire life. I'm going to stop there for just 1 second because there's probably plenty of people cussing under their breath or maybe just screaming at their speakers or their iPhones or whatever you're listening on. Hear me out. Harry meets a lot of people in this series, and there are a ton of incredibly impactful relationships. Let's face it, as a sole lone wolf type of a hero, savior, wizard boy, he's not going to get it done. He's not going to save the day because he's some prodigy. He doesn't train like Rocky. He's not going to take on the world single-handedly. He's pretty average from a magical prowess and intellectual standpoint. He's not an idiot, but he's kind of just another dude in some ways. So he leans heavily into relationships that he makes along the way. So who might be more important than Ron Weasley? The first one that people are shouting at me I can hear you. Hermione. She literally saves their ass every book and is more of the prototypical hero from a skill and intellectual standpoint than anybody else in this book, maybe perhaps aside from Dumbledore. But without the relationship that Harry has with Ron, first, there's no train meetup. There's no I'm going to bed speech. There's no crying in the bathroom. And thus, there's no troll fighting and no friendship with Hermione. Maybe they become friends another way. Maybe through Neville, maybe through the library. Let's pretend that Harry, if he's not friends with Ron, actually goes there. But what if Harry actually ends up hanging out with, Seamus and Dean instead? Seamus, sorry. I said Seamus, didn't I? Seamus or Dean instead. Hermione coming in as the third wheel, fourth wheel in that weird trio? No. In this story that we get, no Ron, no Hermione. What's another impactful relationship that could be more important than Ron? Well, Dumbledore. Duh. But I don't count Harry as meeting Dumbledore at any point in the series really a meetup or a meeting, because Dumbledore has literally been pulling the strings for Harry's entire life. If you haven't realized that, you haven't listened to any of our previous episodes. So I don't, when I'm thinking about a person that he meets in the wizarding world being more important to Harry throughout these books, I don't count Dumbledore among that, and I still think it's Ron. Who else could it possibly be? Lupin. He teaches him how to cast a Patronus, which is obviously a big deal. But against the scale of lifelong best friend, future brother-in-law, hunting Horcruxes and killing Voldemort, it's, Patronuses are important, but slightly less important. Sirius. I might make a few people a little displeased with me here, but I kind of think that the Harry-Sirius relationship is a little more on the hypothetical side and a little less on the thing of substance side. Give me a sec. He meets him. Sirius goes on the run. They spend a little bit of time together in Grimmauld Place, surrounded by no less than 10 or more people at pretty much all times. They exchange a few letters. They have a couple meaningful chats in the fire, but I don't think Sirius really does that much for Harry. And while it's emotionally pleasing, it's nowhere near the importance of the way he leans on Ron and the importance of Ron in his life throughout the story. Who else? I'll give you one more possibility. Hagrid. He tells Harry he's a wizard. That's huge, obviously. But even learning that he's a wizard, Harry doesn't kill Voldemort without Ron and Hermione by his side. And as I established a minute ago, he doesn't become friends with Hermione without being friends with Ron first. So, most important introduction of Harry's life, when Molly introduces him to her youngest son, Ron. I'm going to consider that matter closed.
The Belated Binge Podcast.